Base rent versus additional rent in a commercial lease. The cost of most lease arrangements for commercial real estate can be divided into two distinct categories: base rent and additional rent. Together, these two rental payments, with certain retail and restaurant leases having a third component, percentage rent, represent the commercial tenant's recurring financial obligation to lease the subject premises. Each of these rental components have distinctive purposes and attributes from the perspective of the landlord. Base rent facilitates the realization of the acquisition cost of the real estate and thereafter the profit of the landlord, while additional rent is intended to facilitate a flow-through on a proportionate basis of taxes, insurance, and operating expenses for the entirety of the building and real property from the landlord to the tenants. To better understand each of these integral rental payments, we will look at them individually.
Base rent is a set rental payments that a commercial tenant must pay to the landlord for leasing commercial real estate, as distinct from variable rental payments such as additional rent and percentage rent. Base rent is established at the outset of the lease term and its renewal, with it being quite common for the base rent to escalate during the lease term and its renewal. The calculation of base rent typically involves multiplying the square footage of the lease space by the agreed upon rental rate per square foot. For example, if the base rent is $20 per square foot and the lease space is 1,500 square feet, the base rent would be annually. That is $20 per square foot multiplied by 1,500 square feet, resulting in monthly base rent payments of $2,500. The escalation of base rent over the course of the lease term might proceed by way of a step escalation, such that base rent might commence at $20 per square foot for the initial 4 years of the lease term, increasing to $22 per square foot for the next 4 years of the lease term, and a further increase to $24 per square foot for the final 2 years of the lease term. Although many commercial lease agreements provide for a fixed base rent for the lease term, with prescribed step escalations in base rent at set times during the course of the lease term, there are commercial lease agreements that allow for adjustments to the base rent at specified intervals to take into account actual inflation, market value, etc. If the base rent is subject to adjustment at specified times during the course of the lease term, it is important to understand the methodology for calculating those adjustments to base rent, be it Statistics Canada Cost of Living Adjustment, Consumer Price Index, fair market rental value, arbitration, etc. Base rent, together with its escalation over the course of the lease term, together with other rental payments such as additional rent and percentage rent, if applicable, must be properly scrutinized prior to entering into a commercial lease agreement such that it is appropriately budgeted. Additional rent in a commercial lease arrangement is a rental charge equivalent to the tenant's proportionate share of the building and real property's insurance, realty taxes, and operating expenses incurred by the landlord. The constituent parts for determining additional rent are set out in the commercial lease agreement, including the landlord's incurred expenses from the operation of the building and real property, such as insurance, realty taxes, as opposed to the landlord's income-related taxes, management, administration, maintenance, repair costs, common area costs, and a broad array of further operating expenses. The specifics are generally set forth in the commercial lease agreement, which identifies what is included by way of both regularly recurring expenses and occasional expenses, including the specific scenarios where such expenses may be excluded. For example, where another commercial tenant is solely responsible for the particular costs. The landlord will attempt to recover by way of additional rent as much of the expenses it has incurred and is permissible pursuant to the commercial lease agreement and the law, such that a commercial tenant needs to scrutinize the lease agreement against inappropriate or improper inclusions in additional rent. Commercial tenants are typically charged their proportionate share based on the square footage of the premises as a percentage of the total square footage leased of the building, of those permissible landlord expenses that are charged by way of additional rent. Due to specific tax considerations, commercial tenants only pay in their proportionate shares the equivalent of the landlord's operating expenses due to the particularities of GST, HST taxation that makes direct payment not tax advantageous. It should also be noted that the amount of additional rent can change and fluctuate from year to year, with landlords oftentimes providing an annual estimate which tenants pay subject to a year-end reconciliation. This variability in additional rent from year to year cannot be underestimated, given that the fluctuations can be considerable and the commercial tenant is contractually obligated to make payment thereon. The financial impact and inclusionary breadth of additional rent are such that it must be seriously scrutinized prior to entering into a commercial lease agreement, such that it is properly budgeted. For experienced legal representation with respect to commercial leases and other legal matters pertaining to one's business, contact our law firm today. Thank you.